Welcome to Coffey Talk, real stories from real people. I'm your host, Kate Coffey-Bacon, and every Monday we'll sit down for honest conversations about successes, failures, and the lessons we learn from both. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's talk. Welcome back to Coffey Talk. And today I am talking with Kim Congleton, a respected leader in the Microsoft Dynamics community and someone I deeply admire for the way she leads with courage and with complete authenticity. Kim is passionate about empowering people to trust their instincts and create space for growth, even if it means making mistakes along the way. In the conversation today, she's going to share a lesson that shaped her early career, why asking forgiveness instead of permission can be the key to building confidence, leadership, and trust. I can't wait for you to hear it. Kim, welcome. I am so thankful that you agreed to spend a few minutes with me today. Your story, your perspective on trusting your gut is so deeply inspiring to me. If you could kick things off by sharing the story behind the lesson in your words.
Thanks, Kate. I'm super happy to be here, excited to talk to you today. And I know we've had conversations, here and there about this, so I'm really excited to share this today. But I would say that, all throughout my career, I was blessed at the beginning of my career to have some really great managers who taught me, to ask forgiveness, not permission. I was transitioning from a career where I had worked for the government, and I had a great boss at the government, John Cook. He was a retired lieutenant colonel, and he had taught me, to really, I'd come to ask him a question, and he's like, well, what do you think you should do? And I'd say, well, I think I should do this. And he's like, okay, great, go do that. And so I think after the fourth time of me doing that, he's like, why do you keep asking me questions? And I'm like, what? He's like, do you realize that every time you ask me a question, you already know the answer to it? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, every time I ask you, what do you think you should do? And you answer, and it's the right answer. So it was really just very empowering to hear him say that. And, I think I was all of 23. So he just really gave me permission to do and trust my gut. Mm-hmm. There's a couple times I might have made the wrong decision, but he always had my back. He's like, well, what did we learn from this? And, usually it was like, well, I should have thought that through a little bit more. I took it only so far, and I really should have thought about the big picture. So he also taught me to think about what's the big picture? I'm going to make this decision, and how does it affect, what's going to come next? What's going to be the next decision I need to make? So, he was really great and instrumental in that.
So those are two huge foundational lessons for a young person to learn, right out of the gate. There's so much that we could talk about there. There is, the empowerment that he gave you to just go and do. I think, man, there's so many lessons there. I'm like, where do we go? What do we do? But I think when it really comes down to what that is about is trust. Yeah. And that's trusting yourself, him trusting the team, trusting you, creating a work culture where mistakes aren't necessarily failures, but springboards for maybe future successes, opportunities to grow. That, what an empowering boss to have, to give you that mentorship at such a young age. And what a blessing. I didn't realize that you were that young when we first talked about this story. And now that you built a whole foundational career around that. I think that puts a lot of importance on us as leaders to empower the people that we are leading to be able to make those decisions and just go. Yeah. So this early manager, this leader in your life, John Cook, gave you the freedom to make the mistakes, gave you the empowerment to just go. How did that shape the way that you are leading today, now?
When I first became a manager, there was a couple things, and a couple things that he had taught me too, is that I'm never going to ask, well, actually my grandma taught me this one, but I'm never going to ask somebody to do something that I wouldn't do as a manager, right? Mm-hmm. I'm never going to put somebody in that position. I'm also going to try and empower people. We had a lot of talks about management and how I wanted to own my own business someday, and I wanted to be a really good leader, whether I was in charge or not in charge. I think you can be a leader without a title too. Like walking into any situation, you can be a leader. But we really talked about how being a leader is really about bringing out the best in people, teaching them to trust their gut, teaching them to not ask permission, knowing and giving them a safe space that, hey, I got your back. If you make a mistake, I'm the one that's going to go take the heat for it, and I will every single time, as long as you learn from that lesson. Mm-hmm. So I think, those were core things that I learned early on from people who were my managers, and then in growing up in some of the things that I had to do. So I grew up in a big family, and we always had to go help and do things for other people in the family. So it was really about taking those things into my role as a manager or as a leader in a company and helping other people to see maybe what they didn't see. Seeing things in other people, like, you're totally capable of doing this. I know you are. And giving them something that they're capable of, giving them the permission to do it and learn how to do it, even though they might not think they're capable of doing that.
Looking forward into your career from that time to now, is there a moment or a time when you went with your gut and maybe it was completely against the grain and it paid off? Like it worked. You were right.
Ooh, wow.
I'll give you a minute with it if you need it.
Yeah,
it's a big one.
That's a big one. That's a big one.
Yeah.
When I look back, there was a couple times where it was a little bit scary in my career. Actually, when I was working with John, there was a moment where we were contracted by the government, and our contract was gonna go down from being able to have 2 people to 1 person. And I really wanted to go more into tech. And so I was like, you know what, I want to try and get a position somewhere where I can really get in and really learn more about technology, working with, databases, things like that. I mean, now I'm going to date myself. This is back in the 90s. So I was like, you know what, John, you keep the contract. I will go and find something else to do. And 9/11 happened, and I had a position that I was talking to somebody at John Deere. It was pretty much, I was getting ready to fill out the application. There was a really great entry-level position, and everything just dried up, right? And so I'm like, wow, I'm not going to have a job on September 30th. And at the time, we were actually building a house. So I'm like, okay, I can figure this out. So I actually went to work for the contractor that was building our house. So I worked for 3 months building a house, and I drive past that house and I'm like, man, I really helped build that house. It's kind of cool. But I was like, I have to find a job in tech. And so I started like talking to people, calling people I knew, and just really trying to figure out where I could go. So I did know I had actually worked at this company before, and I really wanted to get back into working at that company. They had a side that worked on election software. And so I called the owner like every day, and I'm like, I did this for like, I don't know, probably 40 days. And I'm like, if I was there today, I would be doing this for you, or I could do this, or, what do you need help with today? Like, what's your biggest problem? Like every day I'm like, hey, good morning, Mary. So finally they gave in, and on like, I think it was like 2 days before Christmas or Christmas Eve, they're like, come in after Christmas and you can help us do this. And I came in after Christmas, and, I think I had said I could figure out how to write some SQL queries that would export data out of one database and be able to import it into this other Access database. And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Of course I can do that. I show up on the first day. I'm like, wow, this can be a lot more work than I thought. So, but yeah, it ended up, it took me a couple days to write the script. It was like a 10-page SQL script. It was crazy and insane, but yeah. So I think that was, it was really scary, especially like financially. And there were a couple times I'm sitting there and it's December, sitting there framing a house in. It's like, 20 degrees. I'm freezing my, off. And I'm like, well, maybe I should have planned better. I think that was, and I've been in tech ever since, and I haven't looked back. So.
I think sounds like that was a very pivotal moment for you where you knew what you wanted to do and you made a plan for it and you ran after it. You mentioned being the leader to people that are looking to you for leadership and allowing them to make mistakes. I think, speaking for myself, sometimes the hesitation there is, what if these mistakes repeat? Like,
Right.
what if this is an ongoing thing?
Yeah.
So how do you balance encouraging that instinct in someone, but also making sure the mistakes don't repeat and they learn and you see growth?
Yeah, I think it's all about looking at, okay, what was the mistake we made? And then how can we change that? What are you going to do differently next time? What are you going to learn from this? What's the lesson you're going to take away from this? And I think, early, it's always when I get a new employee or when I'm working with somebody, it's very much like, I don't care if you make mistakes. I'd rather you make a decision and maybe it doesn't turn out as well as we want it to, but I'd rather you make a decision and move forward than just be stuck, right? So the discussion is always like, hey, as long as you learn from your mistakes, I will always have your back. I think it's really about giving people, helping them see it and not giving them the answer, but like, hey, okay, let's sit down. Let's figure this out. What were the things that went wrong? What were the things that you learned from it, and how are you going to do it differently?
As a leader, we do have to have those really hard conversations where
Yep.
we're looking at, you nailed it. I think the key there is, what would you have done differently? And if this happened again, how would you handle this differently? And walk through that scenario with them. As a leader, how do you handle those tough conversation when instinct might clash with an expectation? What does that process look like for you?
Whew, that's a good one.
When you're looking at somebody and you're like, this is
Yeah.
gutsy. This is not at all what I would do.
Yeah.
And to still empower them. I think, how do you have that hard conversation?
I think it's also about understanding consequences, right? So like, hey, here's the consequences of your actions. We lost this deal and sometimes they have significant consequences. Sometimes it hurts financially, but I think it is about accountability as well. So yes, they have to learn from it. Yes, they have to know like what they're going to do differently, but also understand there are consequences, and some of them are financial. There's also times where you're not the CEO, so there's that hard conversation with the CEO, and then there's the other hard conversation with the actual employees. So I think it's also maybe making sure that it's a conversation that's had with empathy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know you tried to do your best, and I know your heart was in the right place, but the decision was not what it should be. And I would say that, while I'm saying kind of give them all this permission and freedom, there is within reason, right? So there's also making sure that you have guardrails where you're checking in with them, right? So I also make sure there's a lot of communication. Even though it's maybe me just checking in, like I'm not going to micromanage people, but I also am going to know what's going on. And really, if we're maybe going down a path that we maybe don't want to go down, it's making sure you can also help them realize that maybe they need to change course or change direction. So
I've taken all of these like professional personality and professional tests, and all of them come back as one of strategy and vision. When I make a business decision, I might make it, but I'm also such an analytics girly.
Yeah.
I want the numbers to back up my decision, right? So I
Yeah.
might make a decision and then just sit back and watch. If I make a decision that might be a little bit disruptive or something different than anybody else is doing, I'm going to be like, I really instinctually feel like this is a decision that we should make. This is a direction that we should go.
Yeah.
And then in 6 months, I'm checking analytics. I'm making sure that I'm double checking to make sure that instinct was right. And if it wasn't, we switch gears. Or I might say, give me 6 months to see if this is going to work. And if this doesn't work, we'll revert back. And I think it is trusting your gut, but there's that old trust and verify, just to make sure that what you're thinking and the things that you're putting into place in a business setting or in a personal setting.
Yeah.
that those things are supported by other evidence in your life. What an empowering statement to be given to you at such a very young age as a professional. And I can see how it shaped you. And in the conversations that we've had, you get really passionate when we're talking about this. And it's like, makes me want to be a better leader. It makes me want to create a way to empower people that are looking to me for leadership, for decisions. So if listeners remember one thing from your story, what do you hope that one thing is?
I hope it is like if it's somebody young in their career, I hope it is trust your gut. Try a little bit of ask forgiveness, not permission. Go to your managers with solutions. Trust your gut. If you still want to kind of verify that you've got the right answer, go to your managers or team with like, hey, I think this is what we can do. If you still kind of need, or there is a need to have that kind of validation. I think as managers, it's really about figuring out how we do let people trust their gut and making sure they know that you have their back. If they fail, it's not easy. I mean, I've had some pretty hard conversations with customers and my boss and, CEOs in the past. So I think it's giving people that permission to do that and making sure there's guidelines and things in place, guardrails to kind of help them do those things. It's not easy, like I said, I don't have, this gray hair has come from some of those conversations. So
it's wisdom. It's proof of wisdom. Right. Thank you, Kim, for joining us today. You can connect with her on LinkedIn. I will add a LinkedIn link in the show notes from today so you can find her, connect with her. What a powerhouse, Kim. I'm so glad that I get to see you and interact with you at so many different industry events. Thank you so much for joining Coffey Talk today. Until next time, keep trusting your instincts, keep giving others the space to learn, and keep remembering that mistakes are absolutely part of the journey. Until next time. Thank you for joining us today on Coffey Talk. A special thanks to my guests for sharing their story and to you, the listener, for being a part of this conversation. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a Monday morning chat. Until next time, I'm Kate Coffey-Bacon, and this has been Coffey Talk.